Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video we are going to be making two classes for our poker game. We're going to be making a UI class and a UICard class that will correspond to each of the cards here. So let's get started. First thing that I'm going to do is make some new files in here. We're going to have one called ui.ts and one called uicard.ts. Okay, so a UICard is going to correspond to a normal card that we get from our deck, one of these, and it's going to correspond to the element on the page. So, starting off here, we'll say class UICard, and it's going to have a private, public read-only card, which will be the card it represents. So, public constructor, and that'll take a card, like that, and then we'll say this.card equals card. That's the absolute basics, but we want to make this class correspond to one of these elements on the page. So I'm going to add a few more properties. I'll say public read-only element. So I'm bad with variable names. I'm sorry. That'll be an element. Document.create element, that's a div, and public read-only image element is an HTML image element, document.create element image, like so. Okay, and I guess we'll set those up now. This.element.classList.add card. Okay, and this.element.append child. This.image. This.image.source equals this.card.image name, except that's not quite right because we have to prepend the image directory like that onto the source so that it can find the image. Okay, that looks pretty good. And we're going to add a few more just flags that we can set to toggle these states here, highlighted and discarded states. So I'll have private discarded false and private highlighted, which is also false. And then we'll have getters and setters for these that will trigger the class toggling. So I'll say public get discarded like that, and we'll do the same thing for highlighted. Whoops. Like so. So now we have those getters, and public set discarded. No return type because that's not returning anything. But we have to take the new value boolean, and then we'll say this.element. Well, this.discarded equals value, and this.element.classList.toggle discarded according to this.discarded, like so. And we'll do the same thing for highlighted. And there we go. that should be, that's probably good for now. And now we'll implement the UI class. So that'll be class UI public constructor. That'll take a parent, which is an element, and this parent element is going to be this main element, so then we can access all of the elements inside. Okay, so I'll say private read only. I don't know if private and read only, that's an interesting combination. Parent, which is an element, like so. This dot parent equals parent, and then we'll set up handles for this, and this, all of those elements, I think. So we'll say private read only. I don't think we need these read onlys because we're not going to be deleting them or changing them very much anyways. Whatever. Okay, so private, what was I implementing? Cache display. Cache display, which is an element. Good enough for now. This dot cache display equals parent dot query selector. Cache, I believe is what it was called. And we're assuming that this does exist. Yes, okay. Now we also want private bet input, which is an HTML input element, like that. This dot input equals parent, well, I suppose I better say HTML input element, parent dot query selector, bet input. Better make sure I get my period in there, so I'm selecting the class. Okay, next we want our bet button. This one we're going to make public so that we can add event listeners. Public read only. Bet button is an HTML button element. Okay, and this dot bet button equals HTML button element, parent dot query selector, bet button, like so. This will be similar for the play button. Like so. And then lastly, this cards list element. So I'll say private cards list element, which is an element. Put them in sequential order as they appear on the document, might as well. This dot cards list element equals, force that to be an element, parent dot query selector, cards. All right. So now we're going to have to implement an add cards method and a delete cards method, because we're going to be, this class is mainly going to be managing the buttons, the input here, and most importantly, all the cards here in our cards list element. So that's going to be an essential part of this class. So I'm going to say public add card, and this is going to take a normal card like this, and it will return a UI card after it's added it to the display. So I'm going to create a weak map here. I'll tell you more about that in just a sec, but before we can use weak map, we have to come over here to our tsconfig and change this to our target to ES6. Okay, now I am going to pause the video really quick while I restart my TypeScript compiler. Okay, and I'm back. So Now we're going to use a weak map here. I'm going to say public, actually private cards, which is a weak map, and that's going to use a card for a key and a UI card as a value. So a weak map is similar to a normal JavaScript object. So for example, I'll say let O equals a new object, okay, and then we have keys like key and value, say true. But the thing is, we can only use strings as keys, strings or numbers as keys. The weak map, the gist of it, of why we're using this, is so that we can use a card, which is an object, as a key, as opposed to a string as a key, because that would be a lot more of a hassle. So anyways, there are some other advantages to using a weak map that you can discover for yourself if you look up the documentation. But for now, that's the main reason that I'm using it. There are some others, but all right, let's get going. So add card. I suppose I better initialize this here. So this.cards equals new weak map, like so. Okay. Now add card. This.cards.set card to a new UI card, which I'm going to create up here. So let u for UI card equals new UI card, and that references that card. Okay, and then we'll set that like that. Now we also have to actually append this card to our cards list element so that it actually displays. So I'm going to say this.cards list element.append child u.element. There. Okay, and then return u, because we have to return a UI card. Okay, next I'm going to make public replace card. I'm not going to make an explicit remove card, because as far as I have the functionality of this game planned, at least, we're only ever going to be needing to add cards, replace them. So if I have 1, 2, 3 cards and I want to discard the second card, I'll replace it with the new card, or we'll clear all of the cards to start a new game. That's all the functionality that we're going to need. So we're going to have, we don't need to implement a remove card method. So public replace card, this will take replace, I'll say we'll take the new card first, that'll be a card, and old card second, that'll also be a card. And that will also return a UI card that represents the new card, that will be the UI card that references the new card. Okay, so first we have to say let old UI card equal this.cards.get old card. Okay, and I'm gonna add an exclamation point at the end to tell TypeScript that, well, I'm pretty sure that that we already have this card in the display. Otherwise, I suppose we could remove it and say if old UI card equals undefined, then we could throw an error. You could say throw card not in display. I suppose that works. Okay, and after that, so we have to replace the card. I'll say this.cards list element dot replace child, new child. Well, we have to create a new UI card then. So let u equals new UI card from new card, like so. replace child u dot element, and then the old child is old UICard dot element, like so. Now we're going to have to remove the old card from the weak map, so this dot cards dot delete old card, okay, and this dot cards dot set new card with u. Alright, so now we have replaced the card. And then I'll say public clear cards, that'll be void, and this dot cards equals just new weak map. This is one of the advantages of using a weak map, is if you is that the weak map, it doesn't hold on to references and it won't prevent garbage collection. So that's why I can just say this dot cards equals new weak map without worrying about any random references lying around. So that'll clear stuff out really easily for us. And then we also have to clear out the entire cards list element. So I'm going to say while this dot cards list element dot first child, while it still has children, this dot cards list element dot remove child, this dot cards list element dot first child. Perfect. Okay, so now we have our add. Oh, I forgot to return here. Return u. So now we have our add card, replace card, and clear cards, and I'm going to add a couple more accessors for this property here, this cards thing, so that we can access it outside of our user interface, so that when we're actually running the game, we can tell which cards have been discarded, and we can also set which ones need to be highlighted. So I'm going to say public get cards, so that means, let me delete that really quick and rename this to underscore cards. And I'm going to say public get cards. That'll return a weak map with a card and a UI card, like so. And we'll just return this dot cards, like that. I think that should be good. Now let's see if we can rudimentarily, whatever the adjective form of whatever the adverb form would be. So we're going to hook this up to the display so we can, get rid of all of those dummy elements there and come over here, and I'll say let UI equal new UI document dot query selector main, and I am 100% sure that we have main in our page. So well, let's just see if we get any errors, I suppose. No, doesn't look like we have any errors. So what is UI? UI, we have, looks like everything got hooked up pretty well. Awesome. Okay, let's add a couple cards just for the sake of it. UI.add card, just for testing purposes. New card. 4 of suit dot diamonds. 4 of diamonds. Why not? And see what happens. There, perfect. If I click on this, nothing happens because we haven't attached a click listener to any of these cards yet. But that'll be something for the next video. I hope to see you then, because this video is over. We've implemented our UI and our UI card class. Hope you learned something from this tutorial. Hope you found it interesting and useful. If so, give it a like, maybe share, please subscribe. It means a lot to me. But anyways, have a good one.